Ilara's husband threw her out of the car 30 miles from home after a heated argument that left her reeling. Disoriented and furious, she decided that she'd had enough of his cruel ways. Stranded on the roadside, a plan for revenge began to take shape in her mind, one so audacious that it would change everything. What she did next left him shocked and scrambling to recover. Ilara started walking aimlessly, trying to get a ride from passing cars. Each car passed her without even slowing down, leaving her feeling more isolated with each step. The sun was setting, casting long shadows on the empty road, and Ilara realized her situation was as dire as her mood. She took a deep breath, determined not to let the fear creeping inside her take over. She needed to stay focused. She felt a mix of humiliation and fury, thinking about how Dave's temper got the best of him yet again. "Why do I always end up in situations like this?" she muttered to herself, quickening her pace. Anger fueled her steps, but tears welled up in her eyes. She wiped them away quickly, unwilling to let this moment break her entirely. She knew she deserved better, and it was time to take action. Ilara decided to call her friend Emma for help. She took out her phone, her hands still shaking, and dialed Emma's number. "Emma, it's Ilara," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Dave threw me out of the car. I need a ride." Emma's voice on the other end was filled with concern. "Oh my God, Ilara, stay where you are. I'm coming to get you right now." Ilara felt a small sense of relief. Emma quickly picked her up and immediately began expressing her concern about another violent outburst. "This isn't the first time, Ilara. You've got to do something about Dave's temper," Emma remarked as she drove. Ilara nodded, silent but grateful for Emma's support. Emma glanced over, eyes filled with worry. "You can't keep living like this. It's not safe." The words hung in the air, heavy with truth. Ilara knew Emma was right. They planned out the next steps, debating whether to go to the police or handle it privately. "Maybe we should file a report," Emma suggested. Ilara hesitated, unsure of how far she wanted to take things. "I don't know, Emma. Do you think going to the police will actually help?" Emma sighed, gripping the steering wheel. "It might, but we could also start by finding a safe place for you tonight." Ilara nodded in agreement. Ilara instructed Emma to drive to a nearby motel to rest and collect her thoughts. The car ride was silent, the weight of recent events sitting heavy on them. Pulling up to the motel, Ilara felt a sense of exhaustion mixed with determination. "Thanks, Emma. This place will do for now," she said, stepping out of the car. Emma nodded, looking relieved. "Call me if you need anything else, okay?" Ilara agreed, heading inside. She debated whether to contact an attorney about her situation. Sitting on the edge of the motel bed, Ilara scrolled through her phone contacts, wondering who might be able to help her legally. The idea of involving an attorney felt overwhelming, but the situation called for serious measures. She decided to hold off for now, choosing to focus first on getting some rest and thinking clearly in the morning. But the thought stayed with her. Ilara recalled how Dave's rage had escalated over the years, recounting similar incidents where she felt trapped and belittled. Memories flashed through her mind, yelling matches, slammed doors, nights spent crying alone. "How did it get this bad?" she whispered to herself. Each memory strengthened her resolve. She wouldn't let him control her any longer, not after everything she had been through. The injustice of it all fueled her determination to take action. As she sat in the quiet motel room, she hatched a plan to strike back in a way that would hurt Dave where it mattered most to him, his career. She made a mental list of his work vulnerabilities, thinking of the ways she could turn his professional world upside down. Ideas began to form, and for the first time in a long while, Alara felt a spark of empowerment. This time, she would fight back. Sitting on the motel bed with a notebook in hand, Alara began making a list of Dave's vulnerabilities. She thought about his professional life, his prized possessions, and even his social connections. With each item she wrote down, a picture of his weaknesses became clearer. "This could work," she murmured to herself, feeling a grim sense of satisfaction. The list grew longer, each point representing a potential move in her plan. Alara vowed not to be a victim any longer and readied herself for the confrontation. She looked at the list she had compiled, feeling a surge of empowerment. "No more hiding," she muttered, her hands steady. She knew the risks, but also knew the rewards. This time, she had a strategy. With one last look at the notebook, Alara took a deep breath, gearing up for what lay ahead. The next morning, Alara went back to their house carefully, knowing Dave would be at work. She parked a few blocks away and walked the rest of the distance, her heart pounding. Slipping in through the back door, she moved quickly but quietly through the house. "I need to be quick," she whispered. It felt strange to be there, but she had a mission. She wasted no time heading to Dave's home office. She snuck in to gather important documents and incriminating evidence from his home office. Opening drawers and sorting through files, she moved with purpose. "Let's see what we have here," she said quietly, rifling through papers. Each document she found added to her arsenal. The sound of a clock ticking amplified her sense of urgency. She kept an eye on the window, ensuring no one saw her as she worked swiftly. She stumbled upon his financial records, discovering some shady transactions. Her eyes widened as she flipped through pages of bank statements and financial logs. "Got you," she whispered triumphantly. The documents detailed questionable deals and unexplained transfers. Her heart raced with each damning piece of evidence she uncovered. This could seriously damage his reputation. She methodically sorted through the records, making sure she had everything that could expose his misconduct. These records could seriously damage his reputation, and she took photos of them with her phone. Each click of the camera felt like a tiny victory. "This will come in handy," she muttered, ensuring the images were clear. She knew these records could be her bargaining chip. Alara double-checked her phone, making sure the photos were saved securely. With the evidence now documented, she felt more confident about the next steps. Alara also took valuable items that Dave cherishes, knowing their loss would add to his aggravation. She picked up a couple of expensive watches and a few pieces of memorabilia he held dear. "These will sting," she thought, placing them carefully in her bag. Each item was a small piece of his world, and losing them would hurt. She moved quickly, making sure to leave no trace of her presence. She then left the house unnoticed, making sure everything appeared untouched. Heading back the way she came, Alara's heart pounded with each step. "Almost there," she murmured, adrenaline surging through her veins. She retraced her path cautiously, ensuring no one saw her. Once back in her car, she took a deep breath, allowing herself a moment to relax. The first phase of her plan was complete, and it had gone flawlessly. Alara met with a private investigator recommended by Emma. They sat at a small coffee shop, the investigator's seasoned eyes appraising her. "I need your help," she began, sliding the photos and documents across the table. He took them, his expression serious. "This looks significant," he commented, flipping through the evidence. Alara nodded, feeling a mix of anxiety and hope. This was another crucial step in dismantling Dave's facade. She handed over the financial records and explained the situation. "Dave's temper has spiraled out of control. "And I can't live like this anymore," she said, her voice steady. The investigator listened intently, nodding occasionally. "We'll take him down," he assured her. Ilara felt a weight lift off her shoulders. With every detail she shared, she felt more fortified in her resolve. This alliance would be pivotal in her quest for justice. The investigator leaned back in his chair, exuding a sense of quiet authority. "Ilara, you need to be cautious," he advised, his eyes scanning the documents she had brought. "Dave is not someone to take lightly, especially with his professional connections." Ilara listened intently, absorbing every word. "The key is to act strategically," he continued, outlining his plan. "We need to gather more evidence quietly before making any moves." Ilara nodded, feeling hopeful yet anxious. For the first time in days, Ilara felt an odd sense of relief. Having backup in the form of this seasoned investigator was comforting. "It's good to know I'm not alone in this," she admitted, a small smile forming. The investigator nodded, his demeanor reassuring. "You're not alone, Ilara. We'll handle this together, step by step," he replied. His confidence was contagious, and Ilara felt her own resolve strengthen. She was finally taking control. Ilara's eyes narrowed with determination. "I need you to dig deeper into Dave's activities and connections," she instructed the investigator. "Focus especially on his financial dealings. There's something off about them." The investigator nodded, making notes. "Consider it done. We'll uncover whatever he's hiding," he assured her. Ilara handed him the initial documents she had found, feeling a sense of purpose. This would be the turning point. She was hitting Dave where it hurt. They agreed to stay in constant communication, ensuring that no details slipped through the cracks. "Keep your phone on you at all times. I'll update you regularly," the investigator said, standing up. Ilara nodded, feeling more secure with each passing moment. "Thank you, really," she said earnestly. He gave her a reassuring smile. "We're in this together. Stay strong, Ilara." She left the meeting feeling more empowered than ever before. The first phase of her plan was in motion. That evening, Dave came home to find Ilara and some of his prized possessions missing. His eyes scanned the room, realization dawning on him. "Ilara!" he yelled, though he knew she was long gone. Anger flared within him, hot and immediate. The house felt emptier, her absence a glaring void. He stormed through the rooms, confirming what he already knew. She had left, and she had taken important things with her. Panic began to set in. Dave's anger flared, but he quickly realized that calling her would be futile. He clenched his fists, pacing back and forth. "Damn it," he muttered under his breath, frustration mounting. There was no point in dialing her number. He knew she wouldn't pick up. His mind raced, trying to piece together where she might have gone. It was clear she had planned this, leaving him to grapple with an unsettling sense of vulnerability. Dave sat down, trying to piece together where Ilara might have gone. His frustration grew with each passing minute. What did she take? He wondered aloud. He moved to his office, checking through his important files and prized possessions. Something valuable was missing. But what? The uncertainty gnawed at him. He went through drawers, checked shelves, but couldn't place exactly what was gone. His anger simmered, but he knew he had to stay focused. Meanwhile, Ilara stayed hidden, but began sending Dave ominous text messages. "You have no idea what's coming," she typed, her fingers shaking slightly. She hit send, picturing his reaction. Dave glanced at his phone, his face contorting in rage and confusion. What is this? His mind raced, torn between his need to decode her cryptic words and his overwhelming work responsibilities. Each new message from Ilara was a taunt, driving him further into paranoia. Dave's mind raced, as he tried to decipher Ilara's cryptic messages while juggling his career responsibilities. At work, he struggled to focus, his thoughts constantly drifting back to her texts. "She knows something," he muttered, staring blankly at his computer screen. Emails and meeting reminders piled up, but all he could think about was what Ilara might have on him. His normally steady demeanor started to crack, colleagues beginning to notice his distraction. His frustration grew as he realized he was losing control. Between work pressures and Ilara's enigmatic texts, he felt a sense of helplessness creeping in. "I need to find her, and soon," he told himself, pacing his office. The more he analyzed the situation, the more elusive the answers seemed. His grasp on reality started to slip, each message from Ilara tightening the noose. Control was slipping through his fingers, and he felt it acutely. Ilara visited her family lawyer to discuss safeguarding her assets and preparing for possible legal action against Dave. Sitting in the lawyer's office, she felt a mix of apprehension and determination. The lawyer, an experienced woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, listened carefully as Ilara recounted Dave's increasingly volatile behavior. The lawyer took notes, her face serious. "Ilara, you've made the right choice coming here. We need to act swiftly to secure your assets." The lawyer advised her to document everything and prepared temporary restraining orders in case things get out of hand. "Every message, every incident, even financial records. Document it all," she instructed. Ilara nodded, feeling the weight of the task but knowing it was necessary. "We'll make sure you're protected," the lawyer reassured, sliding the documents across the desk. Ilara signed each one, feeling a sense of responsibility wash over her. This was just the beginning. With the legal paperwork ready, Ilara gained more confidence to launch the next phase of her plan. Leaving the lawyer's office, she felt a new sense of empowerment. No longer just reacting, she was now taking proactive steps to secure her future. "I can do this," she thought, as the sunlight hit her face. Ilara took a deep breath, the documents clutched in her hand, serving as a tangible reminder of her growing strength. Ilara also set up meetings with a few journalists to subtly leak details of Dave's troubling financial activities. Sitting in a quiet cafe, she spoke cautiously, ensuring her own safety while providing enough information to pique their interest. "This is just the tip of the iceberg," she hinted, watching as the journalist jotted down notes. "You'll find that there's much more if you dig a little deeper." The journalists looked interested, promising to follow up. This move ensured that if anything happened to her, the information would still get out. Ilara knew that once the journalists started investigating, they wouldn't let go. "Thank you for your time," one journalist said, shaking her hand firmly. Ilara smiled, feeling a sense of relief mixed with anticipation. She couldn't predict how everything would unfold, but she knew she had set a safety net. She walked out of the cafe, her resolve deepening. Feeling empowered, Ilara readied herself for the final confrontation. She spent the evening reviewing her notes and coordinating with the investigator, ensuring all loose ends were tied up. "I'm ready for this," she whispered to herself, her heart racing with a mix of fear and excitement. The investigator's updates reassured her that they were on the right track. Ilara felt a newfound strength within her, knowing that she was prepared for whatever came next. While Dave was at work, Ilara sneaked into his office and left anonymous tips about the financial discrepancies she discovered. She moved quickly, making sure not to leave any evidence of her presence. "This should get their attention," she whispered, slipping the envelopes into the mail slots. Her heart pounded, but she felt a rush of triumph. With each step she took, she felt closer to reclaiming her power. She exited the building stealthily. This action set off internal investigations that put Dave under pressure. His bosses began to take notice, and whispers of potential fraud circled the office. "What's going on?" Dave muttered, feeling eyes on him more than usual. Meetings were called, and inquiries began. Dave could feel the scrutiny intensifying, each question chipping away at his facade. He knew something was amiss, but the source remained elusive. The pressure began to mount, clouding his usually confident demeanor. Colleagues began to ask questions, and Dave felt the walls closing in on him at work. "Dave, have you heard anything about an audit?" one coworker asked casually, trying to gauge his reaction. Dave forced a smile, though his heart raced. "Nope, nothing I know of," he lied. The questions were relentless, each one adding to the growing tension. He felt his control slipping away, and the doubt in his colleagues' eyes rattled him deeply. He was both panicked and furious, knowing that Alara was somehow behind this. "She's doing this," he fumed, pacing his office. His mind raced, but answers eluded him. How did she get this information? He wondered aloud, frustration bubbling over. The weight of the situation began to press down on him, his every move questioned and scrutinized. Dave's anger grew, but beneath it all, a sense of fear took root. He was losing his grip. Dave tried to track Alara down, but his every effort was thwarted by her careful planning. She had anticipated his moves, leaving no trace of her whereabouts. "How can she be so elusive?" he muttered, frustration building. His searches turned up nothing, leading him to question his understanding of her. Each dead end only intensified his anger, but he had to admit, she was staying one step ahead. The stress began to take a toll on him mentally and physically. His sleep was plagued by anxious thoughts, and he found himself snapping at colleagues and friends. "You don't look too good, man," a coworker commented, eyeing him cautiously. Dave brushed it off, but he knew the truth. The constant worry about Alara and the mounting troubles at work were breaking him down. His facade of control was crumbling. Alara then arranged to meet with one of Dave's business rivals, offering the incriminating information she had gathered. They met at a discreet location, where Alara slid a folder across the table. "This is everything you need," she said quietly. The rival, intrigued, scanned the contents, his eyes widening. "You've done your homework," he remarked, impressed. Alara nodded. "I just want to see him face the consequences," she replied firmly. The rival was eager to take Dave down and readily agreed to help Alara. "Let's make sure this hits him where it hurts," he said, sealing their alliance with a firm handshake. Alara felt a sense of relief, knowing she had support from someone powerful. "We'll time the release perfectly," the rival assured her. Together, they started to outline their approach, each step carefully planned to ensure maximum impact on Dave's career. They came up with a plan to release the information to the public while shielding Alara's involvement as much as possible. "We'll use anonymous sources and secure channels," the rival explained. Alara listened, jotting down notes. They decided on strategic leaks, contacting media outlets known for investigative journalism. "This way, you remain in the background," he continued. The plan was elaborate, but Alara was determined. The less Dave knew about her role, the better. This alliance fortified her resolve, knowing she now had powerful allies. Alara left the meeting feeling a renewed sense of strength. "We're ready," the rival had said confidently. The words echoed in her mind as she walked away. For the first time, she felt genuinely supported. The daunting loneliness she'd felt during the ordeal began to fade, replaced by a steely determination. She wasn't alone anymore, and that made all the difference. Ilara felt a mix of satisfaction and anxious anticipation as the day of reckoning approached. Each step brought her closer to justice. Soon, she thought, picturing Dave's inevitable downfall. Despite the constant tension, there was a flicker of excitement in her heart. The anticipation kept her focused, each action meticulously planned. The looming confrontation gave her adrenaline, preparing her mentally for what lay ahead. She wasn't just reacting anymore, she was leading the charge. She continued to update the private investigator to stay one step ahead. "I met with his rival," she informed him. "He's on board." The investigator nodded approvingly. "Good. It's crucial we stay coordinated," he replied. They reviewed the details of their plan, ensuring no stones were left unturned. Ilara felt a surge of confidence, knowing the investigator had her back. Their regular check-ins were becoming a lifeline, keeping her grounded and informed. Dave finally decided to confront Ilara directly, using mutual friends to triangulate her location. "She has to be with Emma," he deduced, frustration evident. Reaching out to friends and colleagues, he pieced together snippets of information. "Anyone seen Ilara?" he'd ask casually, hiding his desperation. Slowly, the puzzle came together, pointing him towards Emma's place. His anger surged, but so did a grim determination. He needed to face her, even if it meant a showdown. He showed up unannounced at Emma's place, demanding to see Ilara. "Where is she?" he barked, his frustration barely contained. Emma remained calm, her face a mask. "Dave, you need to leave," she said firmly. Just then, Ilara stepped forward, voice steady. "I'm here, Dave. What do you want?" He glared at her, fists clenched. But Ilara stood her ground, ready for whatever came next. The final confrontation was about to begin. Ilara was expecting such a move from Dave, and she was ready for it. She walked into the living room with a determined look on her face, carrying a small voice recorder and a stack of legal documents. Her hands were steady as she placed them on the table, her eyes locking onto Dave's with a mixture of resolve and defiance. She was prepared for this confrontation. She calmly began to explain her intentions. "Dave, I have every intention of exposing your secrets if you don't agree to a fair separation and settlement," she said, her voice steady and unwavering. "These documents outline everything I've discovered. Your choice is simple: cooperate or face the consequences." Dave's eyes widened, but he tried to maintain his composure. The room felt tense, the weight of her words hanging heavily in the air. Dave, realizing the severity of her determination, initially tried to intimidate her. "You think you can just walk away and demand terms?" he sneered, stepping closer. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." Ilara didn't flinch. Instead, she met his gaze with an unyielding stare. "Don't underestimate me, Dave. I know exactly who I'm dealing with, and I hold all the cards now," she replied confidently. His threats grew hollow as he saw Ilara's unwavering stance. Every word he threw at her bounced off, ineffective and weak. "You won't get away with this," he blustered, trying to regain control. But the usual intimidation tactics fell flat. Ilara stood her ground, the voice recorder flashing a small red light as it captured every threatening syllable. "Enough, Dave. You can't scare me anymore," she stated simply, her voice strong and clear. Dave's life continued to spiral out of control as investigations at work intensified. Each day seemed to bring new questions, new suspicions. His usual allies began to distance themselves, wary of the growing storm around him. Colleagues whispered behind his back, and he could feel trust eroding. Every attempt to regain control slipped through his fingers, leaving him more isolated and desperate. His world was unraveling, and he didn't know how to stop it. Ilara's calculated strikes had left him vulnerable and on the brink of losing his job. He could see it in the eyes of his superiors, the way their questions became sharper, more pointed. The air was thick with suspicion. His once solid career was now a fragile house of cards, and Ilara had pulled away the supports. He tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy, but the pressure was mounting, and he felt it acutely. He received a notice of an internal audit, and the depth of the trouble he was in became crystal clear. The document in his hands felt heavy, each word a nail in the coffin of his career. "This is bad," he muttered to himself, feeling the walls closing in. Fear and panic churned within him, but he tried to keep a blank face. The audit meant his secrets were about to be laid bare. Desperately, he tried to reach out to his few remaining contacts to salvage what he could. But word had already spread. "Hey, can we meet?" he'd ask, only to be met with polite refusals or outright silence. The more he tried, the more apparent it became. No one wanted to be associated with him anymore. His reputation was toxic, and each door closed in his face only deepened the panic he felt. Panic set in as he realized Ilara's revenge was far from over. Every move he made seemed countered by her meticulous planning. Her ominous messages still occupied his thoughts, each one a reminder of her relentless pursuit. He pored over the internal audit notice again, the full impact hitting him. This wasn't just a momentary setback. It was the collapse of everything he had built. Ilara's revenge was a calculated, ongoing assault. In a final twist, Ilara orchestrated a public confrontation at a charity event Dave was attending, ensuring it got ample media coverage. As Dave mingled, trying to keep up appearances, Ilara stepped forward, documents in hand. Cameras rolled as she revealed how his temper and reckless actions had led to both personal and professional downfall, showing the incriminating evidence. The room fell silent, then erupted into chaos. Reporters swarmed Dave, demanding comments. As cameras rolled, Ilara didn't miss a beat. She detailed how Dave's temper and reckless actions had not only strained their marriage, but also jeopardized his professional standing. Holding up the incriminating documents, she made sure every word was audible and every detail crystal clear. Dave stood frozen, his face a mask of shock. The silence in the room was deafening as the gravity of his actions became apparent. The scandal erupted into a full-blown crisis for Dave, with reporters swarming him for comments. Microphones were shoved in his face as questions flew at him from every direction. "Mr. Dave, how do you respond to these claims?" one shouted. "Is it true you've been hiding financial discrepancies?" another asked. Dave struggled to form a coherent response, his usual composure shattered. The room buzzed with the frenzied energy of breaking news. Ilara stood composed, knowing that she had executed her plan to perfection. She watched as Dave continued to falter under the relentless questioning. Her breathing steady, Ilara allowed herself a moment of relief. The months of planning, the sleepless nights, it had all led to this. Each word spoken, each document held up, it all contributed to the unraveling of a man who had once held so much power over her. The crowd gasped as Ilara dropped the final bombshell, revealing Dave's illegal offshore accounts and tax evasion schemes. Holding up detailed financial records, she pointed to specific transactions, leaving no room for doubt. Reporters turned their focus back to him, the gravity of the situation sinking in. Dave's face went pale, and whispers circulated through the room, each one amplifying the severity of the accusations. Ilara had them all in the palm of her hand. Dave had been siphoning money illegally into offshore accounts, a fact that Ilara exposed decisively. She took the time to explain how these transactions were made, leaving no stone unturned. The audience murmured in disbelief, the weight of his actions becoming apparent. The once respected figure stood exposed, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. Ilara's determination had unveiled the truth, and now there was no turning back for Dave. Dave's reputation was tarnished beyond repair, and he faced potential legal action for his financial crimes. As the scandal spread, even his closest allies began to distance themselves. Legal experts weighed in, predicting a grim future filled with lawsuits and criminal charges. No longer commanding respect or authority, Dave found himself isolated and vilified. His career was in shambles, and the public eye turned him from a respected figure into a cautionary tale. Ilara felt a sense of justice and closure as she saw the fallout from her actions taking full effect. Each news report, each social media post discussing Dave's downfall reaffirmed her decision. She had taken a stand, and the world saw the truth. The weight she'd carried for years began to lift, replaced by a lightness she hadn't felt in a long time. Ilara knew this was just the beginning of her newfound freedom. She started planning her future, free from Dave's toxic influence and ready to rebuild her life. Sitting with her thoughts, Ilara made a list of goals and dreams she had shelved for too long. Each item represented a piece of her that had been suppressed, but now demanded attention. With Dave out of her life, she could finally pursue what truly mattered to her. The possibilities seemed endless, and for the first time, she felt hope. Emma and the private investigator congratulated Ilara on her successful plan and offered their continued support. "You did it, Ilara," Emma said, hugging her tightly. The investigator nodded approvingly. "It takes a lot of courage to do what you've done." Ilara felt a swell of gratitude. Her circle may have been small, but it was filled with those who truly had her back. She realized that with their support, she could face whatever came next. With Dave out of the picture, Ilara stepped into a new chapter, empowered and determined to live her life on her own terms. She took a deep breath, feeling the winds of change around her. There was no more fear, no more manipulation, just a clear path ahead. Ilara embraced the unknown, ready to forge a life filled with the freedom, peace, and happiness she deserved. The past was behind her, and the future looked bright.